Hey everyone, Chelsea here from A Frugal Homestead. We just got a big box of apples from our local orchard. Um, I don't even know where they are, Honeycrisp maybe. My husband got them, so we've got to preserve them. I've been working on some applesauce, but we also today are going to dehydrate apples. So let me show you how we're going to do it. So the first thing that we're going to do with our apples is we need to wash them, which I already did, and then we're going to peel them and slice them. Now, if you want to dehydrate them with the peel on, you totally can. I don't really like it. It's a little chewier, and I feel like it takes longer to dehydrate. So we're just going to use our little apple peeler here. And it peels and cores the apples. Bucket here from the brush. And then it also spirals them, so that makes it a lot easier to put on the trays when we go to dehydrate them. So I'm just going to keep kind of peeling them here. I'm just starting out, and so sometimes it takes a little bit to get my rhythm with my little blade here. This is old. This is my parents' apple corer and peeler. Might even have been my grandma's, to be honest. So it takes a little bit to get a rhythm and to make sure the blade is working. Now, once my apples are peeled, they'll start to turn brown and oxidize. So what I'm actually going to do, or what I've done, is added water into this bowl with a bit of lemon juice. And I'm just putting the apples in that to help keep them looking fresh and not browning. So when I actually put them in the dehydrator, hopefully they won't brown. That's the idea behind it. And you kind of see how I split them up just a little bit here, just to kind of get the water inside of the apples. So then as I'm continuing to peel and core them, they're not turning brown as they're waiting for the rest of the apples. My apples are all peeled and cored now. I have them in this lemon juice water. And now I'm just going to take them. And since they're all kind of spiraled together, I just take and kind of snap and place them on my trays. And you can get them pretty close together so that you can get as many as possible on there, because they're going to shrink up because of the water content. I don't typically overlap them, but I will get them nice and close together. And for this, I use the drying racks. I don't use any of the trays because I want to have as much air getting to them as possible, because these are fairly thick slices of apples. If they were thinner, maybe you could use like the fruit leather trays or whatever, but I'm not going to do that because I want them to get all the way dry as quickly as possible. So there is a tray. I will just keep going. Now, one of the questions I get from people is, where do you get your apples? Especially beginners who are starting out canning and preserving for their family. That's a great question. So we get our apples locally from either our orchard, which is just starting to produce apples, so we don't have a ton. These apples actually came from a local orchard. We went and helped pick apples and then gleaned some. So these apples are actually gleaned from the ground. They're still really yummy, but because of the way the orchard works, they're not allowed to sell apples on the ground, even though they're still good. They might have some bruising, but that's where we get a lot of our apples, just from local orchards. So for you, see if you have any local apple orchards. Depends on where you live, right? Sometimes It's harder. In some areas, it's harder to grow apples than others. Look for a local farm stand. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to look for local produce. People can be selling it from their backyard. We sell our produce when we have an overabundance in 10, 15, 20 pound increments depending on what the produce is. Look for a farm stand on the side of the road. A lot of people are starting to get into that because of the homesteading movement. And then if you don't have that, just look for sales at your local grocery store, right? It's a great way, especially when fruit is in season. It's in an overabundance, and that's when it starts going on sale at the grocery store. So look for it during they're on season. If it's the off season, they're usually going to be more expensive. Okay, so we have a couple trays done here. Now let's get them into the dehydrator. This is our dehydrator. It's a magic mill. We got it as a gift from my parents for Christmas, and we love it. Super handy. I'm just gonna go ahead and put the first few trays that I have done in here. I can always add more later because I have lots of apples today. So I'm just gonna do these first few trays and get them started, and then I'll just keep adding to this dehydrator as I get them done. So for this dehydrator, I'm going to put it on, I'm gonna leave it on 10 hours. I probably will actually add more time, and I'm going to put it down to 135 degrees. Usually fruit, depending on what it is, can go from 125 to about 145 degrees. So we're gonna do the happy medium and go to 135. A lot of things I've read said 5 to 6 hours. I feel like that is a really short amount of time. We're gonna put it in for the 10 because these apples are fairly thick sliced, and they may even need more time than that. Things take a long time to dehydrate. I do my zucchini for making zucchini flour, and it dehydrates for 20 hours, and that completely dries it, and that's what you want. You want it completely dried. So we're gonna start with 10. We'll check them at 10 hours, and I wouldn't be surprised if I give them another 10 hours. So they're going. We'll check them in a little while, and I will just keep adding trays. I wanted to show you the apples. They have been in here for about 5 hours, just over 5 hours, and they are not even close to being dry. They're still really pliable. Some of them, like the smaller pieces, are maybe a little bit drier, but they are still very, very wet. So when I said earlier that you need to add time, you need to add time. So I had read somewhere that the time that they give you in the booklet for your dehydrator, you times that by like 4. So for instance, my dehydrator said fruit will take 5 to 7 hours. So we're at 5 hours right now. So if we're saying 5 hours, if we times that by 4, that's 20 hours. So it's a lot longer than a lot of times what they tell you in your booklet or the recipes other people give you. So we will come back at 10 hours and check this. So when this is at 10 hours, we'll come back, and then I will probably, again, like I said earlier, add probably 10 more hours. So it will go overnight, and then we'll check them in the morning. So our 10-hour timer just went off on our apples. So we're going to check them out here. And they are still pretty malleable, not all the way dry. In fact, this one is still super mushy. So like I said before, the suggestion is to take the time they give you and then times it by 4. And so they said 5 to 7 hours on apples. So I am literally going to close this door and set my time for 10 hours. Take my temperature back down to, oops, too far, to 135. and I'm just gonna let this cook overnight. And in the morning, we'll check it out again. Our apples, we think, are done. So we'll open it up here. They've gone for a total of about 20 hours, maybe more like 18. They're crispy. They still have a little chew to them, and that's okay. So what we're gonna do is take them out of here. We're gonna put them into a plastic container, and we're going to condition them, which basically means we're going to leave them in that container for about a week and make sure that there's no moisture in that container. If there is moisture, that means that they're not done and they need to come back in. And if that's the case, then we'll put them back in before we store them for long-term storage. So I just have this little plastic Tupperware container. I'm sure it had like meat or cheese or something in it. And I'm just gonna pull the apples off the tray and put them into this container. And my goal is to get them to kind of make a row. That way you can get as many as possible in each container. And then once we've conditioned them and they don't produce any moisture, then we can fill them, put them in jars and seal them. We can put them in Mylar bags, whatever we want to do. Now, if you're just going to eat these, and these aren't going to be like a long-term storage thing, then they don't necessarily have to be they don't have to be completely dry, right? Because you're just going to eat them and they shouldn't mold because hopefully you'll eat them fast. But if you're not going to eat them quickly and you're planning to store them and rehydrate them and use them for anything other than snacking, then you want to make sure that they are completely dry. So I'm going to keep doing this and then I'll show you my finished containers. All right, we are going to open our apples. They've been sitting on the counter for a week, just in this container. Every day I kind of shake them a little bit just to make sure they don't stick. We're just going to pop them open here. And you can see they still are nice and dry, nice and crisp. I don't want to break that one because it's pretty. They taste great. There's no moisture on the outside, which is what you don't want. If you're seeing droplets of moisture at all, then that's a sign that they haven't dehydrated fully. They can be still a little pliable or crisp, depending on how thick you made them. But now you can store these for long-term storage. So you can put them in Mylar bags. You can add an oxygen absorber. You don't have to, but you can seal them. You can leave them in an airtight container like this and just snack on them. You can put them in mason jars and seal them and remove the oxygen. So there's lots of different ways that you can store them. You preferably want to keep them out of light so that they kind of maintain their color. So in a cool, dry place, or in the back of your pantry if it's dark. Anyway, these can last up to about 2 years, and they're super yummy and they make a great snack. And you can rehydrate these if you want, and put them in apple crisp, apple pies, whatever you want to do. I just like to eat them just like this, add them to a trail mix. So that is how you dehydrate apples. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and we will see you next time.